All right, welcome back, everybody. This is our second segment on Lead with Giants TV. We are here with Barry Banther, the author of A Leader's Gift, How to Earn the Right to Be Followed. And this is a great read. If you haven't got it yet, we'll tell you more about that toward the end of the broadcast. But I am delighted to have Barry Banther with us this afternoon. Welcome, Barry.
Thanks, Tal, very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you and the whole Lead with Giants community.
Great, awesome. And Liz Stinselli is with us. Hi, Liz.
Hi, Tal. Great to be back with you guys tonight.
Hi, Liz.
Excellent. So, Barry, let's talk about the 5 gifts that you share in the book. And I want to ask you real quickly, just initially, I know that you share a lot of experiences in your life, but what really triggered you just to do these 5 and not other ones? Is there maybe a thought?
Yes, if you recall in our last segment, when I got that letter that challenged me as a leader, my first defense was, well, I'm using all the good motivational tricks I've learned, but that's what they are, they're tricks. When I discovered that leadership isn't something you do, it's someone you become, then I recognized that it's not about what you do in terms of motivating someone or trying to get them to get to a certain place, but it's the kind of person you become. And so initially I saw more than a dozen things, but they all begin to fall under these 5 categories. So these are 5 gifts, and the word gifts means this. You don't need a purchase order. You don't need a requisition slip. You can begin to develop and give away these gifts immediately in your company, whether you own it or you're just a manager, because they're exactly that. They are a gift.
Great. So walk us. You should speak to my accounting manager about that. Walk us through those 5 steps.
Let's look at the first one. Here's the first gift. It's called the gift of openness. You know, a lot of managers and leaders say, I've got an open door policy, but an open door policy without an open mind, that's a closed opportunity. So it's not enough just to say I have an open door. You have to be open to people, which means you have to set aside your prejudice. You have to set aside your assumptions. I tell the story in the book about coming home one evening and no kiss from my wife of over 25 years at the time, no hello, and I thought, well, what's wrong? And I walked in the kitchen. I said, sweetheart, is something the matter? And she said, yes, there is. This morning, I thought about a question I want to ask you. I thought about what your typical response would be, and I'm mad at you for it. On an assumption, but we all do that. You make assumptions about people you lead, so I'm not going to ask her to do this because she'll say that. I'm not going to involve him because he'll do this. Stop it. We have to create openness with people, which means we have to, as leaders, be vulnerable. We have to say, I want to get to know you. That's where it begins. I want to get to know you as a person, because when I do that, I'm going to discover amazing things about what you can do when I lay aside my prejudices. Liz, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. But how do you make that a two-way street? Because if, as a leader, you're going to be open-minded, how do you get your employees to also be willing to be open-minded?
Well, I learned this as a parent. You have to model it. Here, there are 3 things I talk about in the book. You have to give openness first. You can't wait for the employees to do it. You have to give it freely. You can't give it just before you need them to do something. That's manipulation. You've got to regularly, every day, be creating that openness. And in the book, I share over 21 questions that you can begin to use that will allow you to be the kind of person that people will open up to. And then thirdly, you've got to do it frequently. You've got to give freely, you've got to give first, and you've got to give frequently. Begin to model that behavior, and my experience has been with the thousands of leaders I've trained that it takes about 30 days of that kind of behavior and then it begins to happen. And I've been thrilled since the book was released. I've been getting emails and letters from people who said, look, I did this and it actually happened. Well, you're becoming that kind of person. When you become more open, you attract openness.
I love the questions that you had in the book to talk about openness, and that's a great coaching tool, not in a sense that we are necessarily putting people in a box, but you're starting to think about that, and you're saying, you know, there's a lot of things I don't know about my team.
Right.
And that's just an amazing. Let's go ahead and go to the second gift that you want to share with us.
Well, here's gift number 2, and it's giving the gift of investing time in other people. The number 1 excuse people give me why they can't invest time in their associates, I'm too busy. Well, you can't be too busy for the most important investment you have to make. But here's the key. It doesn't take long. It only takes a few seconds a day if you do it regularly. And you might think to yourself, well, what's a second worth? Well, ask someone who just missed a plane. Ask someone who just made it to the hospital but they didn't quite get there before their grandparent expired. Ask a parent who just said goodbye to a young son going off on deployment. Ask a bride who's waiting on her husband. A second really matters. So when you invest time, this is not about investing huge amounts of time. It's routinely, every day, investing time in other people. Getting up from your desk, or if necessary, getting on the phone if the employee doesn't work with you, and beginning to invest time in other people. When people experience you coming into their workspace, if they report to you, and you're there without an agenda, you're just spending some time, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes a day, that sends the message that they're valuable. You're not only speaking to them when you need something. It's a little like that 5 or 6 or 7-year-old that crawls up in your lap, and they're not trying to stay up a little longer. They just want to be with you. And so investing time in other people is an absolute requirement to be able to do this. You know, one of the things that I found that's so valuable about time is that it's the small amounts that actually make the biggest difference. And so you've probably seen this, Sal, with the people you work with. They can't use time as an excuse because I show in the book how it only takes small amounts of time routinely. It's a little bit like changing the oil in your car. You don't have to change the oil in your car, but it's going to eventually destroy the car. If you don't invest time and regularly invest time in people, it will eventually, as it did for me as a young man, destroy your relationships.
It's very true, and I have to say, when I'm in my industry in the hotel business, time is so precious, and you lose track of time, and but you get to the point where times equal caring. So if you cared for somebody and you give them the time, it transmits as I care about you, rather than, well, I don't have time for you and I don't really have time to do this, so the person doesn't feel they're cared for.
I'm very grateful that Brian Tracy endorsed my book, and Brian Tracy said something that I learned a long time ago, and it's why I'm so grateful he endorsed the book. He said this: the most important question a leader can ask in any moment is, what's the most valuable use of my time at this very minute? If we ask ourselves that question routinely, many times the answer is going to be, I need to invest time in this person that I'm leading, this person that's next to me.
Right, right. Let's go over to the next one you've got.
Well, the next gift is the gift of listening. And in the book, I relate a story that's painful to us here in Florida, because I remember the day I was teaching at the time when students started running down the hall, and a colleague came in and said, get out in the courtyard, and we looked up, and that contrail that always followed the space shuttle when it took off from the Cape, it just stopped. 73 seconds into flight, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded and crumbled to the earth, and the dream of our space travel, along with 7 heroic lives, was lost. They immediately said, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and the Rogers Commission was formed. But the Rogers Commission discovered the problem wasn't at the bottom, it was at the top, because leaders weren't listening. I'm not going to mention them, but think about some of the business challenges today where companies are recalling automobiles. They're having challenges in government agencies because leaders wouldn't listen. Tal, Liz, here's the thing I learned about listening. It has nothing to do with hearing. And in the book, I share different ways for you to have 5 key things, just 5 steps. If you follow this, you'll become a person who listens. Because when people sense that they're really being listened to, not just heard, they never feel more valuable than they do at that moment. Now, don't you want people working with you who feel valuable? Don't you want them sensing that they want to see you coming, that when they're in your presence, they feel better about themselves and it's genuine? That's the gift of listening. So if you're open to people, putting aside those prejudices, if you're willing to spend time with them every day, and then when you're with them, if you're genuinely listening, it's going to make a huge difference. There's a great company, Ashland Oil, that I talk about in the book. They built a company out of the rural hills of Kentucky into a worldwide company, great energy company, and one of their primary principles is the management team learning to listen to the associates. And of course, Sam Walton may be the greatest example when he said, we learn from our stock boys, our clerks. So listening is a gift, has nothing to do with speaking, nothing to do with hearing. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. I think part of just a lot of us think that we have the answers, as you probably alluded to, but someone else may have. I was just actually listening to a podcast about somebody they interviewed about leadership and blind spots, and how a leader can have a blind spot if they don't listen enough, their assumptions are not being challenged. So I think leaders nowadays don't always have all the answers, and I think we need to listen better, because there could be a better idea out there besides our own idea. We may need to, yeah.
That is so true. When I began this transformation as a young man, I began to read the works of Peter Drucker, and here's something Drucker said about it that really impacted me. He said, in listening, the most important thing is to hear what's not being said. It took me a while, it took me years to learn that. But when I learned how to listen so that I could hear what the person was not saying, that really changed my ability to develop a team.
Great. Let's go over to number 4 now.
Number 4 is the gift of encouragement. You know, everyone needs encouragement, and it's okay to encourage someone when the battle's over, when we say, oh, I knew you could do it, way to go, but that's kind of hollow. The gift of encouragement for a leader happens right in the middle of the event. And so when you're able to step up, and you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but you can say to the team, look, I believe you can do this. Rely on the skills you have. That kind of encouragement really begins to make a huge difference in people. But I found that most leaders hold encouragement to the end. They wait to the very end to say, well, I appreciate how you did this, and we'll talk in a moment about that gift of appreciation. But the gift of encouragement happens in the moment. The great Bear Bryant, who coached at Alabama, the legend has that he was asked by a reporter one day, Coach, will you not listen to anybody about how to coach this team? Will you take no encouragement? Coach Bryant said, no, anybody in the state of Alabama can encourage me on how to coach this football team, but I've got 2 rules. Rule number 1, you've got to give me that advice on a Saturday afternoon between 2 and 4 o'clock. And rule number 2, you've got 5 seconds. On Sunday, everybody will know what you should have done. So the gift of encouragement as a leader means that that person that works for you, that person that's on your team, they believe that you believe in them. And that's going to help them rise to the top. They're going to step up, and they're going to play way above their game when they recognize that the person who leads them believes in them. And in the book, I share a lot of examples of how you can become this kind of person who's a natural encourager.
Very quickly on that point, do you find that encouragement is kind of contagious? As leaders encourage their followers, followers tend to have faith in each other and encourage each other as well?
Liz, you're exactly right. James Madison is the father of our modern currency. He is one of our great founding leaders of this country. Here's what he said. He said the circulation of encouragement or confidence is more important than the circulation of money. He's exactly right. When we see teams, and it's one of the things that is a bit troubling for me with some of the companies I'm in as a leadership consultant, it's mediocre performance in the company. And when I began to talk to the associates and even some of the leaders, they're being very compliant. They're trying to do just enough to get by. They're not willing to take any risk at all. And no company will achieve extraordinary performance without employees who have an extraordinary sense of confidence. And the root of confidence, the key to confidence, is the encouragement of the leader. Today, according to Gallup, the majority of employees are disengaged at work. And engagement's the critical component of improving the bottom line. But the number 1 criteria for engagement is leader engagement. And when the leader's engaged, providing that encouragement, you're right, Liz, it creates an atmosphere where others tend to encourage, and that's when we get companies, as Jim Collins would say, who've gone from good to great.
It's such a great segue when you talk about the engagement level of it and appreciation. So let's talk about the gift number 5, appreciation.
You know, the gift of appreciation is one that I didn't understand, Tal, and if I had known it, and if I'd known it when I was in that young age and that first job managing in Baltimore, my life would have taken a different turn. I'm glad for the turn it took. I say in the book near the end, I'm glad I didn't become the manager I set out to be. Every day, employees come into your place of work and they run into people holding up mirrors. Some people are holding up a mirror that says you're too old. Another mirror says you're too young. Another mirror says you're the wrong ethnic group. You're the wrong gender. You've got the wrong education. You've got the wrong skill set. By the time they get to their desk or to their place of work, they've been bombarded with reasons why they're not the right person. So what happens as a leader if you're standing there in the hallway with a mirror, but this mirror instead says, look at this strength I see in you. And it's not flattery. Flattery is abhorrent. Don't flatter people. Don't say you're a great employee, you're good. That's manipulation. A strength-centered comment, a strength-centered appreciation is this. And Tal, I'll use you as an example. One of your strengths is making sure that your guests are prepared for this program. You sent me an email in advance. You called me in advance. And even when I wasn't fully ready, you walked me through how to do it. That's a real strength that you have. I think it's very important to recognize that we teach people how to treat us. When people come walking toward you at work, if their mind says to them, this is going to be a good experience, Tal's probably, Liz is, Barry's going to bring out something me I do well, they're going to be drawn to you. and they're going to be drawn to follow your lead. Now, most people push back and say, but if I show too much appreciation, my employees will take advantage of me. I have never, in the thousands and thousands of leaders I've trained, whom I've required to go out and give multiple gifts of appreciation week after week and come back and report to me, no one's ever come back and said, I had an employee say, stop it. If you can't say something bad about me, don't say anything. I've never had that. So it's a myth. In fact, here's the truth. The more people believe that you see in them what they don't even see in themselves, their strengths, the more they're open to your coaching, even to what you might call your criticism. So the key to taking someone and helping them see where they need to improve is already to show them where they're performing well, so they will trust you, and they'll trust you with that innermost part of their being. So the gift of appreciation simply means, here's the strength I see in you, here's the example of it, now let's build on that. Don't you think we respond better to that, Tal, than we do to constant criticism or being ignored?
Well, I think you touched on it as well in the book about something that inspired me to actually possibly write a blog post is, what would your followers say about you if you are not there, or if you left the organization? What would they say about you? And so the strength that you described is, what would the other person say about me? And when you really articulated in the book is that when we are our best coaches and mentors and leaders, we can say good things about them. And the ones that really didn't impact us or influence us in a positive way, we really don't say anything. We may say something negative, we may be critical, but when I was reading that in the book, I said, it just hit me like a light bulb. What would somebody say about me maybe 5 years from now, 2 years from now? And it's just, what is the gift that I was able to give somebody? And I think that's so true.
Yes, and let me give you a quick name for everybody to Google and learn more about if you don't already. Frances Hesselbein, a lady who for decades now has been a phenomenal leader, led the Drucker Foundation, former CEO of the Girl Scouts of America, the last leader of Girl Scouts to literally come from the volunteer ranks. Frances Hesselbein developed a phenomenal career as a leader, bringing out the best in other people. Read about how she did it. It will inspire you.
Okay, great. You know, what we'll do here now is we've got actually a special gift for the Lead with Giants community. So we will actually close this particular segment and then do a third segment, just a very short one. Barry will have a gift for the Lead with Giants community. So what I like to do is dedicate that separately. So we'll go ahead and close this one here, and I'll have you guys invited back to the third segment here. So stay tuned, Lead with Giants audience. We'll have something really special for you, okay?